Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Fazina Ibn Muhammad Kamal, 16-12519. Today I would like to present the tutorial 4, which is what are some of important variables that associate with the characteristic of bureaucratic organization. What are some of variables? Discuss also the impact of horizontal and vertical specialization in bureaucracy when it comes to implementation of public policy. So the important characteristic of bureaucracy is, first is vulnerability to nepotism, which is bureaucracy are substructure of small kinship group, which is within such grouping, all of them feel that they are under obligation to help each other in variety ways. Second is availability of external peaceful means of correcting bureaucratic weaknesses, which is it is like device such a constitutional right and privilege, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, civil action have been used for rectifying the defects and misdeeds of bureaucracy. Next is survival of historical experience, which is centralized in organization. As example, the Philippine political bureaucracy was administered according to a civil law system which the Spanish bureaucracy prescribed. Philippines have used the Spanish political bureaucracy as the scapegoat for all the weaknesses of Philippine political bureaucracy. There are indications, however, that the weaknesses are not to be totally and directly attributed to the Spanish government bureaucracy. Next is non-special typing of bureaucrats. Bureaucrats do not comprise a clear-cut social class. Other occupational groups do not look upon civil service as a special calling reserved to a special class or group of persons. Thus, the first bureaucratic organization consists of persons with varied family background, aspiration, educational training, and work experiences. The next is lack of independence from politics, which is it is lack of independence because they work through the legislative and executive branches of the national government. They do not stand by itself. Next we go to next slide, which is the impact in bureaucracy when it comes to implementation of public policies, which is the first is the institutional constraint, which is when the policy outcomes, that is a problem that to face by the policy analysis, which is institutional characteristic limit what can or will be done. Specifically, an agency accustomed to doing things in a particular way cannot innovate very often. Rather, it looks for an effort to integrate new demands into existing patterns of doing business. Next is constraint of politics, which is the activities of political leader constrain policy analysis. Policy ideas are dropped because elected politicians and other appointees oppose them. The reaction of senators, House of Representatives, the President and the Presidential Advisor are anticipated as proposals are debated. Many ideas are discarded because specialists cannot conceive of any plausible consequences which they could be approved by elected politicians and their appointees. Policy analysis suffers this political constraint because policy issues are being analysed. Next is multiple cause of a problem. There are also certain societal problems which may have multiple causes and a specific policy may not able to eradicate the problem. There are policies that solve the problem of one group in society which create problem for other group. Okay, next is costly solution. Policy analysis also face the constant solution to some problem being more costly. For instance, certain level of politic disorder, including riots, civil disturbance, and occasional violence, cannot be eradicated without the adoption of very regressive policies, which will prove too costly to democratic values, freedom of speech and press, right of assembly, freedom to form opposition parties. Thus, a certain level of disorder may be the price to pay for democracy. All this act as constraint to policy analysis. Lastly is lack of communication. It has been observed that policy analysis are gathering dust because they are too long or too hard to understand. A policy analysis is of no use if it cannot be communicated to others. Too often, the policy analysis deals with subjective topics and must rely upon the interpretation of results. Professional researchers often interpret the result of their analysis differently. Obviously, quite different policy recommendation can come out from this alternative interpretation of the result of research. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.